Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Monday, July 7th. We will continue to see warming and drying conditions across most areas of the Great Basin. We do have an area of low pressure that will be moving across the region through midweek, which will have winds increasing ahead of it today over far southwest Nevada. But really, it's Tuesday and Wednesday where these winds increase across central areas and southern areas of the Great Basin with very low relative humidity, which will increase fire potential. Otherwise, lightning activity should be at a minimum. Still can't rule out a few strikes up towards the Uintas today, and we did have some isolated storms down further south in Utah this morning, so can't rule out a few isolated storms the next couple of days, but it's really across central Idaho that might see a little bit more coverage in lightning as that trough moves in towards the middle of the week and even down into southwest Idaho. But right now it's looking like these thunderstorms will still be on the low end with respect to coverage and will be a mix of wet and dry. Over the last 24 hours, we only saw a few isolated lightning strikes, both in northeast Nevada, the Uintas, and then down into southern Utah, with minimal, if any, precipitation. Over the last 24 hours, we had 19 new fires reported across the Great Basin for just over 46 acres, with over 1,300 acres of growth on our large fires across parts of northwest Nevada and then into Utah, and then we still have the horse fire up in Wyoming. Over the last 7 to 14 days, we have had moisture move across both the north and the southern areas of the Great Basin, where some of these areas have seen above normal precipitation. However, still very dry areas exist across much of Nevada and Utah in between these two systems. So again, we've seen generally very dry conditions with the exception of the isolated thunderstorms that have been developing over the last few days. ERC point map shows this trend fairly well, with most of the ERCs across central areas of Nevada and Utah, and even down in the south that have recovered since the recent moisture are above the 80th or 90th percentile. Further north, we did see more of a decline in the ERCs with the more extensive moisture in central and parts of southern Idaho, where ERCs did drop below the 50th or 60th percentile. But as you can see from the arrows, all the ERCs will continue trending upward over the next 7 to 10 days with relatively dry conditions, really in most areas, with the exception of that midweek trough bringing some thunderstorms up north. Looking at some of our 100-hour fuel moistures across the Great Basin, both in northwest western Nevada that we have had recent large fires over the holiday weekend, you can see 100-hour fuel moistures are at record lows for the time of year. They may increase a bit, but for the most part, still staying very low and well below normal. We did have an increase in fuel moisture over southern areas with the recent moisture that did move across the area to closer to normal in some areas. But as you can see from the forecast line, the green line showing the 7-day trend will continue trending downward with really all the fuel moistures across the Great Basin. In many areas, we'll see fuel moistures reach record lows once again, and ERCs reach above the 90th or 97th percentile. Satellite loop from this morning shows clear skies across the region with no smoke impacts. You can see those clouds, or at least the few isolated clouds over central and eastern Utah. And again, that was accompanied with some showers and isolated lightning this morning. Looking at our smoke forecast for the next 2 days, really minimal smoke impacts across the Great Basin aside from the fires that do pick up during the afternoon and evening hours, but for the most part, fairly localized. We will see that trend increase a bit as we get towards Tuesday and Wednesday with the spread if we do see activity on the fires just because of the increase in winds. So looking at later today, you can see the area of low pressure off the west coast with the ridge in the southwest, otherwise very dry conditions in place. The only exception would be over parts of eastern Utah. Again, could see some of those clouds redevelop this afternoon with very isolated lightning. Otherwise, low to moderate fire potential across the region. Winds today will be generally light to moderate. We could see an increase somewhat with gusts near 25 or 30 miles per hour in parts of southern Nevada. But for the most part, we'll see most of the gusts in the teens to between 20 and 25 miles per hour across the region. Otherwise, very dry conditions will continue across the Great Basin really for the next week, if not longer, with low single-digit relative humidity across Nevada and Utah into Arizona. And we will see some fluctuations up north with the trough moving in midweek. But today we'll see relative humidity in the teens to around 20% in some areas. Temperatures will continue to be on the rise and are above normal for the time of year. Again, precipitation, you can see that any lightning activity would be very isolated today. As we move into Tuesday, that low off the coast gets a little bit closer to northern California, so the winds will start increasing over parts of southern, central, and eastern Nevada. So we do have a high risk for these gusty winds For one, the wind gusts will be between about 30 and 35 miles per hour, with some areas a little bit stronger. But also, we've seen recent lightning in many of these areas, and we are seeing very low relative humidity, along with ongoing fire activity. Otherwise, moderate fire potential or low in the north across the region. You can see these winds on Tuesday. Generally, the gusts around 30, 35 miles per hour. Could see a few localized gusts, even in the Sierra, mainly along the crest, a little bit higher. And then up north, if we see any of that lightning activity up in Idaho or Wyoming, we could see some gusty outflow winds just due to the dry nature of the area. You can see the RHs single digits to low teens region-wide. Temperatures continue to remain hot, especially across the north. We'll see temperatures over 100 degrees up in southwest Idaho again in the valleys, and over 105 in the south. You can see the lightning probability on Tuesday increases, especially across central Idaho. Can't rule out some isolated strikes further north or further south across the Great Basin, just in areas that have enough moisture, especially over central and eastern Utah, but any coverage will be very minimal, and the better lightning coverage will be up over central and southwest Idaho. As we move into Wednesday, the trough off the west coast finally starts to move across the Great Basin, so this will increase winds further east on Wednesday. So we have a larger area of high risk for those gusty winds and very low relative humidities over southern and eastern Nevada into Utah and the Arizona Strip. You can see these wind gusts. These will be a little bit stronger on Wednesday than what we'll see on Tuesday in Nevada, so we will see those gusts closer to 40 miles per hour in some areas, and also that relative humidity remains, again, low single digits. Otherwise, we'll see the relative humidity come up a bit in central Idaho as the trough moves through, and you can see from the wind field still that potential for some isolated thunderstorms with the gusty outflow winds both in Idaho and also down even east of the area will perhaps some gusty winds in central and eastern Utah. And you can see that on the lightning probability map. So again, another day where we will have some thunderstorms and wind to deal with both Tuesday and Wednesday. Otherwise, temperatures will drop down a bit as the trough moves through on Wednesday, so we'll see high temperatures in western Nevada, a little bit below normal in the low 90s, and then closer to normal in other areas. The 3-day precipitation, probably anything we see with these thunderstorms aside from central Idaho, will be very light and very localized. We will see a better chance of maybe some lighter precipitation, more widespread with that better coverage of thunderstorms in central Idaho. Looking at the rest of the week from Thursday through Sunday, you can see we do have high pressure to the south. That low pressure starts to move off to the east by Thursday, so we will have drier and warmer conditions continuing through the weekend with very hot temperatures and dry conditions. You can see, looking at any moisture, really nothing to speak of going into the early part of next week. Any return of moisture from the south associated with the monsoon moisture likely won't occur until mid to late next week. So very dry conditions until that point. And you can see the 7-day significant fire potential forecast just shows continuous drying and increasing fire potential with generally moderate fire potential almost region-wide as we get later in the weekend with those hotter temperatures. 7-day total precipitation, no different than the 3-day with, again, no precipitation expected in the extended period at this time. And looking at the 8 to 14-day outlook from July 14th through the 20th, you can see hot and dry conditions really across much of the Great Basin. Any moisture you can see down south is really just above normal across parts of the southwest. But again, we will start to see that return of moisture from the south with a better chance of showers and thunderstorms, at least over southern Nevada, the Arizona Strip, and southern Utah as we get into the mid to late portion of next week. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.